Welcome to the Stephen Hogan Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Hogan. Please hit subscribe, like, share. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Torchmark. They make the best leather goods in the world, all American made. Started in 1917. If you like quality, Torchmark's your brand. Go over to their website, Torchmark, Korchmar. Type in SH10. You'll get 10% off your order. Today's guest is Lee Greenwood. He wrote God Bless the USA, one of the biggest songs in history. He has 10 number ones, he's got 25 singles, Grammy, CMA, ACM, all of it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lee Greenwood. You're down, I think, south of Nashville. I'm a little north of Nashville.
Right.
But the interesting thing is, we're both Sacramento natives.
Oh, really? I didn't know that, Stephen.
Yeah. So
what part of the city?
Well, I was born in Placerville, and so if you know where that is.
Sure. You head up towards Truckee, and you got some beautiful country up there. As a kid, I was raised in North Sacramento, California, on Rio Linda Boulevard, and with 2-3 years ago, my wife and I went out for an event, and I went over to the old street, and the old house is still there, but it doesn't look like anything it did before. It wasn't much to begin with. It was a trailer with a lot of add-ons. I sang at the First Baptist Church there on Del Paso Boulevard, and my sister was raised in Fruit Ridge, and I spent a lot of time in Yuba City and Marysville. I played the Rockland roller rink. You know where Rockland is?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's like when I was like a 12 and 13-year-old, play all night with the Del Reeves Band, which was a country rock band at the time. And I'd get there on a Friday night and then play Saturday. And we would play like 7-8 hours, and my ears were ringing when I'd finish playing. Jeez. You know, I played saxophone, basically, with the band. I didn't sing.
Yeah, I saw that you were a saxophonist, that you started kind of earlier in life at that. But it's funny because of the parallels, because me and my band played all around the same areas.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I'm a lot ahead of you, though. I'm quite a bit older than you, so.
Yeah. Different venues, probably, obviously.
Yeah, my first time I ever sang in a nightclub, and I think it was West Sacramento, was in a place called the J&T Club. And it was just your typical bar dive, you know, and my band was called the Apollos. I don't know why we named it that. It's kind of odd, you know. My guitar player was the lead salesman at Sears and Roebuck, and he was a Spanish kid named Eddie Lovato, and he had. It's funny as I look back on it, he had trouble keeping meter. And as a musician, if you know what that means, we deal in increments. You know, I mean, if you're writing a symphony, it's different. You can split up the bars, but when you're writing commercial music, it's basically 4 of this, 8 of that, 12, 6, 8, or whatever. And he would just keep singing until he got tired of singing that measure, and then he'd like switch keys and go to the next chord. And it was a struggle to get him to play right. But my first song I sang was Mac the Knife. And because I was a fan of Bobby Darin, and I remember singing that my very first time on stage. Oh my gosh!
So yeah, I had a question about that because you made the transition from growing up on a farm, singing in the Baptist church, having a band. I saw that you played at McClellan Air Force Base.
McClellan and Mather, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's like what my dad, when we lived in California, he lives here now, but he would go to the VA down near there, and the air shows would be there. They'd play your song there during the Blue Angels, and anyway,
the Thunderbirds.
Yeah, the Thunderbirds. Yeah, that's what it was. I've seen them both there, but anyway, so you played at that, and I kind of love your story that I heard about how you went from just jamming, you know, playing with the band there, and then you started to see the impact of troops coming back. And what was that like for you?
Yeah, I went to Norte del Rio High School for the last 2 years of my high school years. I was a freshman at Anaheim High School in Orange County because my folks were building motels around Disneyland. That was 1955. I graduated in 60. So 58 and 59, I was a drum major for my high school marching band. And I played drum and bugle corps for the American Legion. And we would march in our parade, and then we'd go downtown Sacramento and march in a bigger parade. And right alongside, you know, the Air Force marching band, Marines, Army. And it was so beautiful watching the discipline and the exactness, the uniforms, the pageantry, the flags. I was just captured by it, you know. And I guess as an American, I mean, we all love our countries. I don't care where you're from. Your country is your home. And if you're German, you're Australian, whatever, you know, your home is special to you. And being raised, like you mentioned, on a sharecropper's farm in North Sacramento, to 20 years in Vegas, and then 40 years or more in Nashville, I never thought I'd ever see the rest of the country like I have. And I thought, sure enough, Los Angeles would embrace me as a native son. I was born in LA in 1942. I thought surely if I moved there, during my tenure in Vegas, I was like, I got to have some national success. I can't keep trucking along like this. And I got an opportunity to do a audition for rock opera in LA, and I went to LA, and I moved there in 1971, the day before the earthquake. And I guess, you know, it was a 7.5 earthquake in Sylmar. I should have probably moved back to Vegas that next morning, because it was kind of like God saying, you don't belong here, you know. And I struggled for 3 years, and I went to the bottom of the barrel. I mean, we had nothing. And and finally I went back to work, and I took some shows in the north in Montana, and then moved back south to San Diego, and then worked my way back to Nashville eventually, and then settled back in Vegas for a few years till my career hit, and then back to Nashville. So I saw a lot of the country, but I had no envision that my national success would ever come. I was 37 when I finally got my first record.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's a lot of pressure on young musicians and people in general, if you're in the entertainment business, that you have to achieve success at a very young age, and if you don't, then it's
well, you know,
over.
it comes in different ways too. I mean, I'm kind of an oddity. You know, we're not growing up in Texas or Georgia or Tennessee to bring country music into my life and then become part of the fiber of country. Mm-hmm. I mean, consider you know, some of the artists who have been here in Nashville and how they've had success and where they came from. That whole crew from Oklahoma, Reba McEntire and Vince Gill, who else is famous from Oklahoma? And then you have the Georgia group, you know, Travis Tritt and the acts, and they come from different places, but there's always that guy who comes to town, the guy or girl, and a guitar. They're normally guitar players. I'm a little odd. I'm a keyboard player and a sax player, you know. But I'm a whole different background of rhythm and blues and jazz and rock. Coming to Nashville and become a country artist, it's like you're really odd, you know, to be who you are and what you represent. But I fit in really well, and I'm thankful for Jerry Crutchfield, who was my producer and the head of MCA Music at the time I came to Nashville. And the help I got from Glenn Campbell and Mel Tillis and Roger Miller and Dottie West and Snuff Garrett and Jerry Crutchfield and all the acts that said, we want you here in Nashville because of what I brought. And my side was like kind of an R&B approach, if you will. Yeah. And maybe not as rough a voice as Kenny Rogers or Travis Tritt or T. Graham Brown. I had just been singing a lot of rock and roll. I mean, my voice was rough. And so we chose a key, and you're a musician, so you know the difference between E and E flat. Mm-hmm. And E is a string instrument key. E flat is a horn key, and I'm a horn player. Oddly enough, that E flat was the key we did It Turns Me Inside Out. And this is an interesting fact, Stephan, but when it hit the radio, it had never... The country artists had never heard a song in E flat before. I guarantee you. It was always in E. So it was a dark sound. It was a tragic crisis song about life and love and losing love. And matching that with my R&B voice and in a flat key, an E flat, it did make a difference for the listening audience. I mean, Joe Bonzel, bless his heart, who's gone now from the Oak Ridge Boys, he called me within a week or so after I'd released that record and said, I had to pull over, and I had tears, he said, from listening to the song because of the delivery. But I guarantee you it had a lot to do with what key it was written in.
Interesting. That's very cool. And there's so many players in town too, writers that tune their guitar a half step down. So I, myself included, maybe you started that. Maybe you're the one that, because you said never had it been done before on country radio.
We had a song that was written for us called "If There's Any Justice," and that low E had to be tuned down a half step to get that low note on it. And it was the only one we recorded ever like that. But it had a different sound to it as well. And that's what we always strive for. You hate to do the same thing over and over and over, you know. I mean, and yet that's what the audience almost wants from you. I mean, some of the artists who would and we recorded a lot of ballads, but we tried not to do the same thing over and over. The only thing I did the same, there were 3 songs written by Jan Crutchfield. That's Jerry Crutchfield's brother from Paducah, Kentucky. And he wrote Going, Going, Gone. That was our first #1 song. She's Lying, which was our second record ever on the same album as It Turns Me Inside Out. And Inside Out, our first record. So I call it the trilogy, but they were very similar. And even when we do the rehearsal with my band, sometimes we get the intros a little mixed up because wait, that's the wrong intro for that song, because the intros are always developed in the studio at the time with the players. And our very first record had Pig Robbins on it, who was a blind piano player, and we developed that introduction in the studio as we did with She's Lying and Going, Going, Gone.
I think it's so cool that you've had such an amazing career. I mean, you're obviously known for God Bless the USA. I think you're probably not mad about it, but at the same time, there's a huge amount of success with the amount of singles and #1s you had, and awards, ACMs, Grammy. How do you feel about that?
Well, you can look at the awards, first of all. You know, the Male Vocalist of the Year twice at the CMA, probably responsible for touring with Alabama because we won their fans, and it's a fan contest. We also won Male Vocalist of the Year for the ACM in '83. That also may have had some impact. Song of the Year with God Bless USA in 1985, that had nothing to do with any other act. I just, you know, it was a song that I felt from my heart. I'd already written dozens of songs. I wrote a hit song for Kenny Rogers called A Love Song, went #1 all over the world. A hit for Mel Tillis called You Can't Fall in Love with Your Crying. So it's not like I didn't write other hits. And I will have to tell you this, that the way I look at that, God Bless the USA has made an umbrella for my career, but it's not a parachute. I don't rely on USA to make my career interesting or passionate, because when we do our show and run through the myriad of hits that we've had, 36 albums and 11 #1 songs and 26 or so charted singles, it's not as many as Ronnie Millsap or Alabama, but it is a lot, and established me as one of the most fruitful country artists ever. And the Male Vocalist Award is what's most important to me, not even the Song of the Year, because I pride myself in being a singer first, musician second, writer third.
Yeah. In my interview with Vince, I believe he said he was a guitar player first and a singer second, but he got known for the singing, not the guitar playing. So
yeah, I don't play sax on the Opry much. They just you know, they don't care.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you a quick joke, a quick story, not a joke. We very rarely do I bring a horn section on with the band, because we have a really good quintet, great musicians, and I've always had. As a matter of fact, on the recent RNC, the band that played for the RNC in Milwaukee all worked for me 10 years. They're called Six Wire. And with the addition of Andy Childs, who had his own career as well as a singer, it just made them so much more dynamic to have another voice in the band. But they are all fantastic singers and writers and musicians. but I have played on the Opry several times with horn players. So there was one occasion where I wanted to do Ain't No Trick, which is one of our hits. And it has this little da-da-da riff in the middle of it, which I played on the record with 3 different saxophones, because we dubbed it in every time in harmony. But I wanted the 3 horns to play live. And so I invited some of the greatest horn players in Nashville to come and play with me that night. We're getting ready to go on, and the curtain's starting to go up. And the stage manager, who I know very well, and we always have our own little belt pack that I use for a remote. And he handed me a microphone, and he didn't know what to say to the trumpet player and the sax player and the trombone player. He said, "Okay, guys, grab your bugles and get out there." You know, he called them bugles. It was like, they're not bugles. These are fine musicians who have spent their life, you know, learning how to be artists. They're just as good as I am in what they do. And I just thought, we always have that joke now when I hire a horn section. When TNN was alive, you remember TNN in Nashville, the Nashville network?
Yeah.
I was asked to play at SeaWorld for 3 years in a row as the final act of the year on New Year's Eve. And it was the most watched television show of the year, every year. And we had many acts who would be my open. Little Texas was our opening act one year. They were very popular, Exile. And I always hired the horns from Disneyland that would come over and play with me, and they were fantastic. So with my quintet, as you know, it's a string band with keyboards, basically. I have 2 great guitar players, singers. But when you add horn players to it and you add the arrangement, and then you play with a symphony orchestra, and you bring in all of those charts, you know, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you know. And the only difference with Alabama from the Bowery to the stadium, it's the same band, the same music. You basically just add more musicians, and you add more instrumental charts and things like that. So it always starts with the music, the song, and then the singers and the band, the artists, and then you just multiply it.
I wanted to backtrack. Like, I'm a believer, and as are you, and I feel like for me, and I don't know about you, but there's been these doors that have opened in my life that I never could have imagined, and doors closed. And for you, in your music career, 1, how did your faith play into it? And 2, what were some of those doors? Because, I mean, like, going from, I'm just interested, from Vegas and Reno to LA, you know, all that stuff. And did you have the faith where you were like, all right, God, I'm going to trust you? Or was it a different vibe back then? No,
I wasn't necessarily full of faith in my Vegas years. I dealt cards in the casinos. I played. I wrote music. I was going nonstop for 4 years. I did triple. Not only play at night, but deal cards in the daytime. It wasn't a lot of time for church or faith. I just, you know, my beginnings, of course, were full of God and Jesus Christ, and of course I studied the Bible. I sang "Oh Holy Night" the first time in my church in North Sacramento when I was like 14. But I think those years in Vegas were, and I was in and out of bad marriages, and just there wasn't a lot of God. But God already had a plan for me, I guarantee you.
So when did you kind of like rekindle that relationship? Was there a come to Jesus moment for you?
Well, when I married my wife, Kim. She's from a Christian family, and they are huge gospel fans with the cathedrals and Gold City and some of the old, you know, gospel acts. And I knew I was marrying into a Christian environment when Kim and I started dating. She was former Miss Tennessee USA, and we were married in 1992. So we've been married 32 years now. And
wow.
Yeah, she brought me back to faith, and I have followed now that path religiously, if I may use that term. And you mentioned the Bible. I have it here in my hand. This is the God Bless USA Bible that we put together, and I have been promoting it for 3 years now because it has documents of our founding fathers in it. It has the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, also the Pledge of Allegiance, which is not a document that started our country, but later honored our flag when we became a 48-star union, and then eventually 50 stars. And so I also have the handwritten version of my song "God Bless USA" in it, which was requested by the publisher. And they're in the back of the King James version of this Bible. It's beautifully leather bound. You see the stars and stripes at the bottom. And of course, President Trump is also promoting a version of the Bible. It's the same King James version, but he even has his name on the front of it. That's fine if he wants to do that. But
that's Trump.
I think Jesus first, if you will.
Yeah.
And it beautifully leather bound, and it really has. I mean, people have really taken to it. I asked my my pastor about it, and he's like, the more people we can bring to faith for whatever reason, I'm happy about that. And you have to remember, we came to this country not to get away from faith, but to praise God and without the King of England telling us what to do. And so when they came, and by the way, if you ever study a little bit of history, when the Mayflower landed at Plymouth Rock, those people were all inscribed to the first Statue of Liberty that was ever built. It's at Plymouth Rock. And on the base of it, where the Statue of Liberty has her foot on the Bible, and her hand is pointing towards God, it's not a torch. And so it's interesting if you ever want to tell people about that. It's there
That's
off
cool.
on a side street where people probably don't see it very often. We were recently in France, my whole family and I. We went to Normandy for the second time. And you traveling down the Seine River, you can get a picture of the Statue of Liberty with the Eiffel Tower directly behind it on the Seine River. It's fantastic. And of course, the one in New York Harbor presented to us by France because we freed them from the Nazis in World War II.
There's so much division in this country right now. And I was talking to some friends before this interview. And one of my friends had something that I thought was kind of profound in a way. And I know that he'll have some really cool insight on it. But this is what he said. I dislike how we live in a day where the American flag flying on my house is a divisive thing. How did we get to the place where the American flag means you're a racist, gay hater who wants to destroy the planet, when actually I'm a hippie lover of all who believes in hard work, being kind, and generosity? I have opinions on how we got here, but I'm curious if Lee does.
I appreciate how he feels. We're a very big country. And New York, when people would come through Ellis Island and become a citizen, they basically assimilated. They wanted to be part of the American dream. And that's what was the fiber of our country for many, many, many years. All nations chasing liberty and freedom. I think somewhere along the way, because we are so big and the woke crowd has began to grasp the power of the internet. I knew when the internet started, my wife has an AOL address, okay, it's like one of the very first. And I knew it then, just like when videos started taking over music, when CMT was crying for video content, and we were recording artists, we're recording industry. And video started becoming more important than the records. The internet became the dominating factor on conversation. And then illegal immigration began to run over this country by the thousands, almost millions, which changed the way we structure our democracy. It's okay for people to have a view because that's what we're built at, as a democratic society. But when the media says and talks about the minority more than the majority, I still believe we're a conservative Christian nation. I don't have any doubt about it. But the voices of those who may have been trodden on for years becomes more important than the voices of those who are productive and patriotic. Remember the sacrifice of the military, Because let me tell you, if we didn't have a strong military and the sacrifice of so many veterans who have gone before us, we would be overrun by those from other countries who would like to take us down. And now we have wars in 2 different countries who blame us for it. That's not the case. We are the most caring, benevolent country on the planet. We have given more in resources, blood, and life for the protection and freedom of other countries, including our own. Do we have faults? Are there people who have gone to Washington, D.C., who have greed, who have sent us down the wrong path for a while? Yes, of course. The blending of life here, if everybody can be compromising, be forgiving, that's my favorite verse in the Bible, is 32. Psalm 32 is about forgiveness. It is the most difficult thing you can possibly do when somebody has done you wrong. And the greatest thing that makes prejudice prevalent is fear. And when people are afraid of another race, another culture, that's what makes prejudice volatile and hostile. I have nothing against the countries of South America who are trying to escape the cartel, bad conditions in any country in South America or in Mexico, who would like to come to America and experience the same life that you and I have had, Stephen. And even though we were raised here, a new citizen who comes here legally probably knows more about our history than we do. Even though I studied in school, I've forgotten a lot. They are so proud after 7 years to become an American citizen. I have seen it again and again and again. And my song, God Bless the USA, is used in the welcome film along with the national anthem and the welcome from the President of the United States. That makes me extremely proud. What does not make me proud is that any administration prior who has not sealed our border and stopped people from China, from Iran, or any terrorist organization who would fly to Mexico and come across the border illegally, filter into our nation, and waiting till they're told to be the next terrorist attack. It is coming. And it's because people have allowed it to happen. We have to seal our border. Once again, get to our sovereignty. There is no sovereignty if we have open a border. I travel all across Europe. It's country to country, and when you drive through a checkpoint, in some cases, they don't even look at your driver's license anymore. But let me tell you, their borders are secure. And you have to have a secure border, particularly from Mexico. Canada, God bless Canada, because it's a huge border between our two countries, and we have worked together in every possible conflict across this globe to protect each other. Mexico, for some reason, we have not had the same relationship. And maybe it started with Santa Anna, and when he came across the border, and the Alamo in Texas. And, you know, you study the history of California, where I'm from, and Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and the price they are paying from illegal immigration. Oh, my gosh. I have such sympathy for the border guards and those towns there that you know, but then now it's everywhere. They're pushing illegal immigration through all of the cities north, and they're experiencing it now in Chicago and New York and wherever. And you're starting to realize this is not going away anytime soon until we close the borders and then start deporting those who are killing American citizens and taking American jobs.
My great-grandfather, who was in World War I, came here from Ireland, and I think the left and the right agrees that like immigration is not a bad thing, and I think we all agree that we're a melting pot, but yet we're so divided. But I think that we kind of agree on the same things in a lot of areas, but it's just on finding the solution, and there's gonna be a solution. But I think so often, and especially I feel like I stopped watching the news for the most part because it just wasn't healthy for me mentally to see that, you know, all the time. I think there's a lot of issues that the left and the right kind of have similar views on, but the rhetoric behind it is just very divisive. And
well, let me say a couple things.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, let me say a couple things. First of all, I don't believe there's a lot of differences between the left and right, you know, in what you say, and I probably agree to that. But having said that, It seems like people in this country strive for the best they can have. I know my parents wanted me to have a better life. I want my kids to have a better life. And I'm not just saying a better life in freedom. I'm talking about economically, generation wealth. That's what people talk about. It takes a lot to have some kid crawl out of the ghetto and become a success. You know why they can do it? Is because they're in a free country and they're allowed to do it. You want to give everybody a chance to excel, and you don't want to have women not have the same chances. Men advancing in business, minorities advancing in business, the same as white, black, red, yellow, white, I don't care. Everybody should have the same chance. Our country just, you know, as it evolves, we do need more citizens. We need the younger generation to understand what patriotism is. To me, to become a patriot, or you don't have to be born here to be a patriot. There's a lot of people who actually serve in the military who are not even a citizen. They become a citizen after the military service. Oddly enough, that happens a lot. But to embrace our Constitution, we have the right to vote another person in. I voted for Kennedy. I voted for Reagan. I voted for Democrat and Republican. It doesn't matter as long as they're somebody that talks about uniting the country and protecting the country. Remember, we have to, I took the oath to the NEA, just like a military person, National Endowment of the Arts Council, appointed by 43. And it says, one of the things you have to do is to protect the country from enemies from without and within. We have enemies inside our country which want to change our country. That's my only problem with the left. They want to change our country down to the framework. They want to start a new country and take away all of the things that have built America to where we are now. That's all.
I get that. I have friends that are, and the beautiful thing is I have friends that are on the left and I have friends that are on the right. And we can sit down and we can have dinner together and talk and be friends and laugh and have different views and opinions on things. But at the end of the day, we can come together. And I think that that's what everybody wants, in a sense, even if they don't know that they want it necessarily. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And the only place that you have to all agree on is respect for the flag.
Yeah.
The flag represents the blood we've given for other countries and our own in the defense of freedom. It represents 50 states and every city in it and all the people who live in it. And that's the one thing we cannot have destroyed. When the NFL started kneeling for the flag, my first thing was, I get it. But you know, you're a football player making millions of dollars. If you want to say something that's important, we're watching a sports activity. You don't bring politics into sports. It's these guys that are very gifted, talented athletes. If you want to make a difference, take the millions of dollars you're making and go spend it in the ghetto. Build a park, build a church. You know, let their brothers and sisters know that you care for them. Don't demonstrate it in front of an audience that is there basically to watch just a fun game.
Yeah, and you being a legend as an artist and a musician in the music business, you have had a career where you work with all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, and they believe all kinds of things, right?
Yep.
And you guys are all doing something together.
Well, I know it's always not kumbaya, but I do know that compromise is important. And I don't use my stage to talk about my political persuasion. I am a conservative Christian, and everybody knows that. I've said it many times, but when I get on stage, I'm a singer. I'm a country singer and an entertainer and an artist, and I love what I do, and I have a passion about music. So there's no sense bringing that to that audience. I get off stage, I'll have the conversation with whoever wants to have it. And like you, I have a few friends that are on the left as well, and we'll talk about, to tell you the truth, we're playing a poker game or something in my house, we're not going to talk about politics or religion. I'm sorry. That's two things we're not going to talk about. I don't know why we would discuss anything like that. to make it a heated or hostile conversation. Because I will say this, as a Christian, I don't want to argue. I want to talk about faith, belief, love, forgiveness.
I think as Christians, we, the two greatest commandments, love God, love people. And I think as Christians, we need to do a better job of that as well, of loving people.
Hard to turn the other cheek when somebody does you wrong, but that's why I love Psalm 32.
Yeah, man, that's well said. I wanted to know, you've sung, God Bless the USA so many times.
Thousands.
Thousands upon thousands. I mean, there's no way of counting.
No.
What was the most special time that you got to sing that song?
I like you asked that, but there's not an answer. At Normandy, aircraft carrier during a USO show, twice inaugurations for 2 different presidents, the old soldiers and sailors home in New York when a soldier came up and pinned his Purple Heart on me. It's hard to have those moments. Retirement ceremonies, giving a home to a wounded warrior where I'm singing in front of the house. We've done 16, 17 USO tours, I don't know how many.
Yeah.
And performing in another country for a military audience that knows we're a long way from home and we're in jeopardy. It's a mixed bag of things, but I will tell you that it's never business as usual. When I do God Bless the USA at the end of my show, it's meaningful. And I think that's what people get from me.
Mm. How important is authenticity in music and the music business?
I don't know that it is. I know that AI has become a topic of conversation. I don't like AI. I think we're better in creativity without AI, and I don't want AI to ever replace my creativity or anyone else's.
Yeah.
I like mistakes. If people make mistakes, that's fine. AI is struggling for perfection. I don't think we need perfection any more than what we strive for in a personal area. There are people a lot smarter than me who can quote the dictionary. And if you make a mistake, that's fine. You're human. AI takes away the human part, and I don't like that.
I feel like the best records were the ones that, like 60s, 70s era records, where there's mistakes, And
there were a few. And then my son, 26, he's discovered vinyl, and of course
me too.
We use vinyl as frisbees because they don't retain the quality that they had when they were first pressed. But we went to CDs, but now my kid actually likes the vinyl. And the reason he likes it more than anything else is not just for the recording value, but the big picture. You have a big square, album that's got your picture on it, and we did 35 or 36 of those. And by the way, Universal has just come out with a new pressing of American Patriot. And that's the album I recorded in 1992, the same year I married my wife, Kim, that has all the American songs on it. I even sang the national anthem, and America the Beautiful, God Bless America, and of course, USA, Battle Hymn of the Republic, This Land Is Your Land, and so forth. And they come out with it in a vinyl album, American Patriot, 40-year anniversary. You can find that on my website, too, leegreenwood.com.
Yeah, vinyl is having a huge resurgence. I take my 1.5-year-old and we go to the record store and we get a record, and he comes home and he jumps all around, and it's just a blast to kind of go record hunting,
Beautiful thing.
My last question is this. I know we need to wrap up. You have had a 32-year successful marriage, and my wife and I will have been married 8 years in August. And marriage is hard. And I'm curious what your advice is on having a great marriage.
Well, I was married several times before I met my wife, Kim. And I think it was real love when I met her. I don't know, but I guess I was looking for family and never found it until I met my wife. And it's just deep love and respect. You have to work at it. I mean, You know, my wife is a business person as well. She has her own business. She runs the Miss Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi pageants for Miss USA, and she has for 32 years. And I have respect for her business and her intelligence. As much as I admire her for being such a beautiful woman, and I never let her forget that. So I think from a man's point of view, you basically have to constantly remind your wife that you still believe that she's the most beautiful person on earth. And we struggle with our two businesses and now our sons and their busy life and how to keep family together. And that's my wife's job. I mean, you know, I'm a worker and I love to work, and you've heard the story so many times. When you work so much, you weren't there for your kids when they were growing up. I was there for my sons growing up, and I'm so proud of that. So being a good father, I think, is the best way you can help your marriage stay together as well, because your kids will honor you just like you honored them, and your wife will respect you for you honoring your children. Never forget how you got started. Always go back maybe every several years and look at the wedding album. That's helpful. Keep faith in your life. Pray every day, and we pray together.
Oh, that's important. That's a hard one to do, but it's important. I'm with you on that. Well, thank you, man, for your time and for sharing some stories, talking a little bit about your beliefs on faith and freedom, and then on music. I really appreciate it.
Faith, freedom, and love. Pretty important, all of them. And for your listeners, if you go to GodBlessTheUSABible.com and pick one of these Bibles up that will give you a little bit of insight in how our country got started with those documents that started our country. And then look for our new album on Universal American Patriot that is a vinyl, red, white, and blue disc. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, you have a great day, man.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.